Hello everyone, Kier here, and welcome to the InfiNOT podcast. I'm focused on the casual nature of the game, and each week I discuss the new patch, the new card, and my feelings on the game. I am also a part of the Snap Judgments podcasting network, which includes other amazing shows like the OG Snap Judgments, featuring Glazer and Roy, Snap Decisions, featuring your Snap DJ Joe, and Snap on This, featuring the super entertaining and insightful Lauren, Ben, and Ree. Now, let's hop into it. So, we have two new cards this week, thanks to High Voltage, and I'll talk a little bit about that and what I think of the rewards so far. And other than that, it's a pretty chill week, so we'll get into it. Let's start with Firehair, who is a 2/3 that says, when one of your cards is destroyed, this uses that card's on reveal. Now, when this card was previewed, I was really nervous. I've spoken before that I like mid-range decks, and this just seems so combo heavy. I thought that it was going to run over the meta, take over everything, and I'm happy to say it's actually okay. Like, it's not breaking the game in any significant way. The stats are showing a little less than a 50% win rate, and honestly, that's just surprising to me. You look at a card like this that has an unlimited cap on how many on reveals it can copy, and you assume something broken is going to happen. But I guess the truth of the matter is, when you destroy something, right, that value is gone. You may have cards that supplement that value in some other way, but Firehair copying a powerful on reveal, something like Black Panther, isn't going to affect her as much as another card, right? So not only will you lose the Black Panther if you destroy it, which is a ton of power that you're wasting, but then, she's only getting boosted up to a 2/6 unless you do some shenanigans. Just as an example, right? Like, the value that you're trying to get off of this card are for on-reveals that aren't going to rely on their power alone for that, combo potential. Which leads to a lack of power on the board where you need it, right? So, her effect is best used for things like the Hood, where you can get multiple demons, or with Ironheart, where you can get multiple procs off of that. And because of that, I think that it's landed in an okay spot, which is good. I'm happy that it's not as broken as I thought it was. I will say, though, I think that this really limits what they can do in the future with certain cards. Like, this just seems like all it takes is one card to come out that has an on-reveal that's particularly powerful with a bad body, right? And then suddenly Firehair is relevant again in a pretty unprecedented way. A playstyle that I haven't seen a lot that I think might really lean into that is something with Destroyer, where maybe you put, like, White Tiger, Ironheart, and this imaginary card I'm thinking of that comes out in the future, and you just destroy all three in a lane, and then bada bing, bada boom, your board is looking pretty good. But who knows? Maybe I don't have to be as scared. Maybe they, have tested this before. You always get a little spooked when you can double the effect of something. So overall, I think Firehair is a pretty cool release. I'm glad that it's not as broken as I thought. And it has synergies with pieces that, are pretty niche usually, like Misery, which really open up some deck designs. So yeah, I'd say she's a solid 4 out of 5 release, for me at least. I think that this card is good, it's just we haven't figured it out yet. Let's move on to High Voltage, which in this track, you can get a couple things like a border, some credits, and that border, by the way, is really unique. I don't know if it's going to be a one-time thing, but it has like a 2099 sort of like neon sign with piping around it, like metal pipes. It is really, really unique, and I don't know what I'm gonna put it on. It's really perplexing me. I'm like, I think my main problem with it is that the piping is so like muted, and the signs aren't like glowing crazily. They're not like the neon borders where the light effect is like striking to the eyes. They're just sort of bright. So I don't know. I don't know what the best use for this is. I see a lot of people putting it on Psylocke, which I think is pretty good. Ghost Spider also seems like a pretty, good combination for me. But I'll have to see where that ends up going. But let's talk about the first Ghost Rider. And as a Ghost Rider fan, I have to get this card. It's silly, it's goofy, and I really, really like it. So, the first Ghost Rider is a 2/5 that says, on reveal, discard the lowest power card from your hand, remove that card's power from this. And if you're like me, and you know how math works, you're probably thinking, oh, well, if I discard the Hood, or a Goblin, or something, the power will go up. And no. Nope, not how it works, which is a little sad to see. I haven't earned this card yet. I don't know how people are so quick by earning this. I assume you have to spend gold in order to get the card this early, which, is fair. For me, though, I'm taking my time doing my dailies, so I'm not going to get this card for a minute. But I'm going to try. I'm going to try to get this card. The last couple voltages, I don't know. For me, grinding that much is not very fun, but I have to get this one. It would be a crime for me not to. Talking about, the card's effectiveness, I think it's unique, right? I think with this new kind of style of Hela propping up, there's a chance that you can do some really cool things with the first Ghost Rider. And obviously, this combos with Ghost Rider in a pretty neat way, right? If you discard something like Gore, because he's a -1 base, and then revive him later, he's actually quite big. And the same goes for cards like Iron Man, or Blob, or Morbius, right? Those kind of cards don't have a high base power, but they do have really strong effects. So I think that there's a definite potential for this card. It sort of reminds me of Swordmaster in that Swordmaster has a couple of cards that he wants to hit in this game, and his effectiveness is pretty good, right? Right now he's a 3/6. And in the same vein, right, you're getting a 2/5 that's going to be effective with some cards, which I think is going to really open up the game a bit. I'm excited to see what people come up with. I haven't seen any decks out right now, obviously, because, like I said, if you the only way to get the card immediately is to spend gold. But I'm looking forward to see what people come up with. My first guess would be a Hela deck, much to my chagrin. I would much prefer, a solid Black Knight deck, but obviously you can't do that with this card. So I would suspect that, it's going to be either a cool hybrid Ghost Rider deck where you're just trying to get a couple of targets out, maybe throw down some good cards, which I'd be excited to try. That sounds like pretty, a bit of fun. But if not, then it's going to go in Hela, and it's going to be pretty alright there. So yeah, I haven't seen a ton of play out of this card, but I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. I think it's going to have a place in the game. And unlike Calling Wing, which is discarding your lowest cost card, the discarding the lowest power really opens some play lines, and 2/5 is a good body. So yeah, I like this card. It's really neat. It's a 10 out of 10 for me. Since we have some extra time this week, I'll quickly go over the new locations, and if we have even more time than that, I might talk about Loki, because I've been doing some labbing. But let's talk about the new locations. I like to cover these every once in a while, because, locations are what makes Snap special, right? So let's talk about Star Brand Center, or Star Brand Crater, my bad. Star Brand Crater, if you have 10 or more power here, +1 energy each turn. So, very thematically, this is a pretty boring location. In the same way that I feel Star Brand is sort of a boring card. Not bad, just kind of boring. If you stack enough cards here, or you have something like, a Star Brand or a Crossbones, you can get yourself some extra energy each turn. I do like that you have to earn it. The other locations that give you energies are just play here or don't play here. So having a requirement like this does add a little bit of, variety. You're going to have both players wanting to put some early power here, but if you invest too heavily in order to get that energy, you're sort of blocking yourself for later. Who knows? Maybe you can make it up with that extra energy that you have, but still, it's all right. I definitely think that locations like this don't hurt the game in any significant way. It does often mean that decks that are trying to boost the board at the end of the game are going to have a bit of a disadvantage, like Patriot decks and the like. But it's all right. It's a pretty stock standard location. I think adding it to the game is a good way to spice things up. So no complaints from me there. The other location we have to talk about is a little more interesting. It's Madripoor. Madripoor says at end of turn, give each highest cost card here +2 power. And what I really like about this is it's thematic, because in Madripoor you have the power broker, if you don't know, who is sort of distributing super soldier serum, among other things, to help criminals, gain power. And the whole city is set up like a gangster paradise where mobsters are trying to vie for the power broker's attention. So having the highest power card be boosted by the power broker is really thematic. I like it. It also sort of sets up using your curve effectively, because if you want to be able to beat out your opponent and get the bonus every turn, you're going to want to put, higher cost cards there every turn, starting from turn 1 up until, whatever turn later. So I think that's really neat. I think that it's a thematic and interesting location where the dynamic of who's getting the power is going to shift every turn. It's not a symmetrical. Well, it is kind of symmetrical in that if you both have the highest cost card there, you'll both get the power. But you get what I mean, right? There's a little bit of play here where interaction is key, and I think that Marvel Snap really benefits out of locations like this where you're both vying to get a benefit. And just to close out here, I don't usually do this, and I'll try to be brief here. I just wanted to talk about Loki for a minute, because I thought that when Loki was going to be shifted down to 1 power, he was going to be broken. I thought he was going to be in every deck. I thought that he was going to be, stupid good. Getting your opponent's cards for cheaper just sounds insane. But I think myself and a bunch of other people have found out, I think the problem is you're just not getting that card draw. Before, I think Cam Best said it best, right? He said before, when you transformed your hand, you were like drawing cards. Because, the cards that you drew after that were from your own deck and you liked those. And then your whole hand, in an instant, swapped to a bunch of cheap stuff. So that was incredible. And then other iterations of Loki had card draw attached to his effect. So you would draw something that was super cheap and then continue drawing after, and you would be able to play them out super quickly. But right now, as it stands, Loki is good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that he's bad. I think right now he's running something like a 52% win rate, but he's not broken like I thought he'd be. And for someone like me, I try to build decks that are going to be interesting and not necessarily meta-breaking to my own detriment sometimes. But I've been trying to crack a list that doesn't involve using Arishem, in order to get the most benefit out of it. Because right now, the lists that you're seeing with Loki are Loki Thanos, Loki Agamotto, and Loki Arishem. That's just that's all the decks are sort of trying to do, and it makes sense, right? You have a big deck, you're trying to get rid of the downside of that big deck when you get the cards that you want. But I was trying to make a list that doesn't rely on that, and I came up with something, and I'm still working on it, and I'd be curious to see what changes I'm going to make later, but I'll read it out really quickly. It's Loki, Quinjet, Adam Warlock, Mirage, Rogue, Agent Coulson, Frigga, Copycat, Galacta, Blink, Blob, and Mockingbird. And as I usually do, I'm going to try to write a deck guide when I eventually figure this out. But Loki's benefit only makes sense if you're getting card draw and you're getting some other benefit from the cards that you're making. Part of the problem that I was having was I was trying to figure out what benefit you get from Loki other than the fact that you're getting your opponent's cards cheaper. Like, yes, that can win you the game, but not all the time, right? Especially in certain matchups like Discard. Terrible matchup. It's just awful when you're playing Loki. So what's the other benefit that you're going to get off of playing these cards? I thought of the two 6 costs in this list, which are Blob and Mockingbird, right? Mockingbird is great if you draw it with Loki early, because the more of your opponent's cards you play out, the cheaper Mockingbird gets, and you can have a nice spike of power, right? Blob works great if you play Loki late, because your deck is going to be big enough that 13 power is all but a guarantee, with sometimes him, spiking over. Blink in this deck is a really good way to secure that, either after you play Galacta or before. So you could have a 5/10 Blink that then brings out a Blob, or if you already have Galacta in your hand and you throw out something like Agent Coulson, you can guarantee that Blob or Mockingbird, which I think is cool. I think that's a good way to spike power into this deck. And Blink can also work if you're playing against a list that you can guesstimate what sort of card you're going to get after playing one of their cards. So I like Blink at that in this list for that reason. Galacta's great. Copy, and this is really interesting too. Quinjet serves a lot of purposes in this deck, not just to help with Loki, but also with Mirage and Agent Coulson and Frigga, all to make sure that you can get those cheap cards even cheaper and get the most value off of it. I think Frigga also doubles down on it. Anywho, I'm still working on this list, and I'm really interested to see. Tell me, have you broken Loki yet? Have you had a lot of success? I'm doing okay. I think right now I'm running like a 54% win rate, which isn't bad. I'm happy with that, but I'd be curious to see if maybe you have something that is a little more interesting. That's all the yapping that I have to do today. I appreciate you sticking with me. Don't forget to check out the other Snap Judgment podcast networks. We do have a Discord where you can talk to me directly. There's a directory for you to get there. If you don't know Discord that well, there are instructions to help you find it if you're that interested. And if there's one thing that you can remember, it's that I'm InfiNOT. Thanks for listening.